What's good? It's Woog. We are getting right into my top 40 albums of 2022. So I just did a video on the albums that I didn't really get to review as closely as I wanted to really consider them for this list. So you could check that out. And then I dropped one on the next 20 out of the top 40. So we're talking 41 through 60, basically the honorable mentions. So feel free to check that out. And it's amazing how many really good albums were on that honorable mentions list. So let's get right into the top 40. And keep in mind, this is all opinion based. Anybody who tells you or presents their list as factual, that's totally bogus. Not only that, but everybody has a lot of really good albums that they did not get to listen to. It's impossible to listen to all of the meaningful or significant releases of the year. Totally impossible. If they told you that they heard everything, they're lying to you. Everybody is pretty much just doing the best to listen to as much as they can, and more importantly, to listen intently to where you're actually absorbing the album rather than just passing through and trying to assess a judgment on it. And also, I excluded ambient and ambient jazz, and even kind of just acoustic only, non-vocal acoustic music from the list. I actually have a list in itself that's ambient jazz. I do listen to a ton of that. I just thought that it was so apples and oranges trying to place those albums among these other genres and this top 40. So yeah, let's get into my 2022 top 40 albums. Number 40, Jid, The Forever Story. Jid is one of the most lyrical rappers in the game. Sometimes when you're super lyrical, it's tough to also make good music, meaningful music, but he was able to pull it off really well here with The Forever Story. Number 39, Gweno with Tresor. This is a kind of a dream popish, folky, Welsh folky album, but it's also dreamy with kind of a pillowy production. I thought it was really good. I thought that it was better than a lot of other dream pop. Like, I'm a huge Beach House fan. Beach House only made the honorable mentions. Gweno hit number 39 here. And Gweno, I didn't see Gweno featured on a lot of publications year-end lists, and it wasn't like near the top of the best albums of 2022 for Metacritic. So Gweno is kind of like a rare entry in some of these lists, but maybe you've seen different. Number 38, Angel Olsen with the album Big Time. Angel Olsen has pretty much been heralded with almost every album release she has. You see her on a lot of lists per album release. So she's on one of those album by album hot streaks. This one, Big Time, it's a lot more peeled back. It's a lot more acoustic, a little more country than some of her other more kind of indie leaning with more reverb style of albums. This one is a little bit more folk and country. I like this a lot. It's my number 38 album of the year. Number 37, Automatic with Excess. Automatic is a artist on Stone's Throw, and Automatic's music is very electronic, but it's also very almost krautrockish, but it's not as droning and as continuous as krautrock. I guess it's a little like Gorilla Toss, but you know, Gorilla Toss also didn't make my top 40 here. But Automatic, very interesting listen. Very, I would say, indie electronic. Give it a listen. I was not expecting it. I heard it on, it might have been Henry Rollins' Saturday night NPR or KCRW radio show, and it just caught me unexpectedly. But yeah, Automatic, Excess at number 37. Number 36, The Lazy Eyes with Songbook. When I first heard Lazy Eyes, I think it was their, not their opening song, but it was their opening single, The Seaside. I thought that they were totally like Tame Impala ripoffs. Now, they are, I believe, from Australia, and they are psychedelic rock. And if you listen to, you know, Tame Impala's early album, Inner Speaker, and you listen to the opening riffs, the guitar riffs, and the kind of reverby, kind of woozy, stony, psychedelic rock opening to the song, The Seaside, I thought that it was the album opener for Inner Speaker when I first heard it. It also sounded like Solitude is Bliss from that same Inner Speaker album. And then when the vocalist started on The Seaside by The Lazy Eyes, I was not impressed. And so I was ready to kind of dismiss them and write them off. Then I had a buddy tell me, no, listen to the album. It's actually pretty good. So I gave the album a listen, and yeah, Songbook is a lot better than I expected it to be. So yeah, The Lazy Eyes, the latest in this, you know, Australian psychedelic wave, which I'm going to do a separate video on how good, given the total population of people in the continent/country of Australia, how much good music is coming out of that country continent. It's really something remarkable, especially if you're talking like in the psychedelic rock realm. But yeah, The Lazy Eyes with Songbook, number 36. Number 35, Viagra Boys with Cave World. Viagra Boys are kind of punk, post-punk, kind of rowdy, kind of shouty, funny. Like some of the lyrics are very humorous, but Cave World is actually a bit of a concept album where they're talking in Neanderthalic terms and kind of relating Neanderthalic lifestyle with today's, political tropes and, alt-right ideologies. And so they're just taking a critical look on, the 21st century state of man and are drawing all of these, Neanderthalic cave world parallels. Very interesting album. And the message didn't come across as too preachy to where it takes away from the quality and the overall enjoyment of the music. I thought that Viagra Boys pulled it off pretty well. So yeah, give Viagra Boys Cave World a listen. They came in at number 35. Number 34, Kurt Vile with Watch My Moves. I thought that this album was a little under the radar. It wasn't featured on a lot of like best of the year lists. I don't know if I saw it on any. But if you listen to the Kurt Vile discography, I thought that this one was about as good as Walking on a Pretty Days. That was the one after Smoke Ring for My Halo. I like Kurt Vile a lot. Like his style of kind of lazy rock, it's a little Mac DeMarco-ish, but I thought that it was even a little stonier than Mac DeMarco's music. And I think that Kurt Vile is kind of an underrated songwriter as well. So he's got these kind of slow psychedelic guitar instrumentals. Then he's got a pretty good vocal style as well. But if you listen to the songwriting, I feel like there's more substance in Kurt Vile's songs than in a lot of other psych rock artists. But yeah, Kurt Vile, Watch My Moves. I was surprised. Like, again, this album kind of went under the radar a bit. But I've got Kurt Vile, Watch My Moves at number 34. Number 33, Pusha T with It's Almost Dry. Pusha T had a tough act to follow with Daytona, which a lot of people thought was the best rap album of, was it 2018 that dropped? Well, Pusha T has a reputation of being a very good album deliverer. Like, yes, he is the quintessential coke rapper of the last couple eras, and his punchlines and his references, super clever lyricist, but he's one of these guys who's got the skills, but also delivers album by album quality that almost precedes him in reputation. That's a good reputation to have. Like, when people think that you're almost can't miss when it comes to the albums, that's what Pusha T's developed. So he was up against it with this next album delivery because he's had multiple albums that had such high acclaim. It's Almost Dry, I would say, pretty much held that line, held the standard for Pusha T. Most people didn't think it was as good as Daytona, me included, but I thought that it was a very good album. I especially enjoyed the opening 2 tracks. That Bramblewood, Pharrell Williams beat on the opener, that was really cool. But yeah, Pusha T, It's Almost Dry, not a misstep in the catalog of Pusha T. He came in at number 33. Number 32, Panda Bear and Sonic Boom, Reset. Sonic Boom is an older artist. Panda Bear of Animal Collective. Animal Collective made my honorable mentions list. But yeah, this Panda Bear, Sonic Boom collab, Reset, I was very impressed by it. I mean, Panda Bear has so many moments in his, Pitch Perfect album or Pitch Person album. And then, some of his stuff, when he was featured on Brandon Cox or Atlas Sound, which is Bradford Cox from Deer Hunter. Panda Bear impresses me with a lot of his features, like when he was featured on Daft Punk's Random Access Memories album. He just has like this sonic palette that just works in a very Beach Boys-ish way when it's working right. Like, Edge of the Edge, I think, from this Reset album. Like, when I heard that, I just kept it on replay. I mean, it's so intoxicating. Some of it sounds a little playful, a little quirky, sonically a little silly, but no, so much of this relatively short. Like, I feel like I place a premium on shorter albums, which I might contradict later on in this list, by the way. But I like the brevity in this album. It's almost like EP length. But yeah, Panda Bear, Sonic Boom, I like the just very tasty sonically. I love the sounds that I'm hearing on this one. Number 32. I don't like track 2 from the album, by the way. It was very annoying to me. That give it to me. Give it. Just very repetitive, but in a less enjoyable way for me. But yeah, I still have Reset by Panda Bear and Sonic Boom at number 32. Number 31, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Laminated Denim. This album is only 2 tracks long. Each song is 15 minutes exactly 15 minutes. So it's 30 minutes long album-wise, 2 tracks, but King Gizzard is so diverse in their sounds. Oh my gosh, this is just, I did a video on their prolific output just a couple of months ago. Feel free to check that out. This is an Australian band that is just relentless in their output. They released 5 albums this year, not 5 singles, not 5 EPs, 5 albums this year. And they were all pretty damn good. Like, there are multiple albums by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard on this list. But Laminated Denim, they hit this krautrock moment on track 2, and track 1 to me is even better than track 2, and I found that one just addictive. The first of their 2 15-minute songs from that album. But yeah, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Laminated Denim, number 31. Number 30, Taylor Swift with Midnights. Yeah, there's a lot of acclaim that backed this album up. The album rollout was, in Taylor Swift fashion, very well done. And it just generated a ton of hype to where it was trending everywhere when it dropped. I've seen it, rank pretty well on a lot of the year-end lists. Obviously, that Ticketmaster debacle, wasn't the worst thing in the world for Taylor Swift. It sucked for her fans, but it just drew more attention to all things Taylor Swift. Like, her concert tour is just so anticipated that she's breaking Ticketmaster, basically, right? Like, I never know what to believe in terms of what's intentional and what's organic. Like, but yeah, Taylor Swift's Midnights, songwriting very good. I didn't think it was as good as Folklore. I don't know if I like it more than the follow-up to Folklore, Evermore. But yeah, this was another Jack Antonoff produced Taylor Swift album. Folklore, by the way, was more Brian or Dessner, or was it Aaron or Bryce? I think it's Aaron Dessner from The National who produced Folklore, which was the best Taylor Swift album in some time. But Midnights, not a bad album, very good songwriting, and I've got it at number 30 here. And by the way, she's still doing that whole parallel careers where she's making new music, rolling out new albums, and at the same time re-recording her old discography so she could own that, since Scooter Braun basically purchased her first 5 or 6 albums from her Big Machine, Red Machine label, which was devastating for Taylor Swift, and that was another huge Taylor Swift related story in the zeitgeist of the music landscape, right? But yeah, Midnights by Taylor Swift, number 30 for me. Number 29, Cannons with Fever Dream. This is a very smooth listen, kind of like an indie pop, kind of like a dance pop, but it's very mellow. It's cool to cruise to, like when you're coming home from like a night out or something, and you're just driving, you're just kicking back, like it is just ultra smooth. Like hardly anything on this album is skippable. It's kind of synth pop, not too dissimilar from, remember LaRue's In for the Kill? I'm doing it for the thrill. Like, this is kind of in that vein production wise. I just had a lot of enjoyment, and I would have been remiss to leave it off of my top 40. So Cannons, Fever Dream, number 29. And shout out to my cousin PT for urging me to get into Cannons. Number 28, Fontaines DC, Skinty Fia. Fontaines DC is another one of those chippy post-punk bands with a lot of attitude, and I thought that the songwriting on this one was very good. They had a lot of hype since they've come out with that album 2 albums ago. This is, I think, their 3rd major release. Doggerel got a lot of acclaim, a lot of, props on the year-end list, and his follow-up got a lot of love too. Skinty Fia, I don't feel has gotten as much love. Is it on the Metacritic best of list, which Metacritic, by the way, aggregates all the publications best of list and kind of ranks how the album stacked up across all publications best of list. Oh, Fontaines DC, they did quite well. They are currently the number 5 album of the year in Metacritic's year-end aggregate wrap-up. So yeah, they are still getting a ton of love. But I really liked the Skinty Fia album. Again, a lot of attitude, good songwriting. Some of it sounds kind of somber, a little downtrodden, so they're not as hype track over track as, say, Viagra Boys. But yeah, Skinty Fia, number 28 for me. Number 27, Nilüfer Yanya with Painless. I remember I met her at the Lodge Room in LA because I was shooting video and more so photography when she had released that Miss Universe album. And I just thought that she was so versatile in sound. Some of her stuff sounded a little alt-rocky. Some of it sounded jazz poppy. And there was a lot of in between. So I was interested in her career pretty early. And this follow-up to Miss Universe, Painless, might even be better than Miss Universe. I like this a lot. I especially like that song Shameless. I like Midnight Sun, I think the song is called. Very good album. And this album further catapulted her into, you know, higher up on the Coachella festival bill, right? Like you start off on like this tiny print on the bottom. This album has brought her closer to the top and has really built more awareness. I think she went from like having like 10 to 15,000 Instagram followers to having closer to 50,000, something like that. So this was a huge gain for Nilüfer Yanya. Very good album, Painless at number 27. Number 26, I've got Wet Leg with the album Wet Leg. They actually got a lot of love too. They were up for a Mercury Prize this year, which Little Sims won. But Wet Leg, this was a very big debut splash. It's a female post-punk, punkish band. And yeah, they killed it with this one. I thought that it was very smartly written, songwriting-wise, well played, song over song, just very enjoyable sounds. Very edgy. Relatively speaking, I thought that this was pretty edgy, but it was smart edgy. It wasn't just totally reckless edgy. It was clever, you know what I mean? But yeah, Wet Leg, number 26. I've got Cass McCombs at number 25 with Heart Mine. This might not even be the best Cass McCombs album, but I have a lot of respect for his songwriting and his album by album quality. And Heart Mine was not a misstep. He's kind of folky singer-songwriter. He's got a decent, not a great voice, but a good voice. But conceptually and melodically, I feel like his songs often hit. Like the choruses, the verses. He's just one of those, you know, singer-songwriter, indie-style singer-songwriters that it just works. Album over album. Heart Mine was no exception. So that's number 25 for me. Number 24, Stella Donnelly with Flood. This was the follow-up to her Beware of the Dogs album, which I liked a lot. And I don't think it got enough acclaim. I think she's from Australia too. But whereas other, you know, indie artists like Mitski, Wise Blood, Soccer Mommy, who I need to go back and listen to her album. I actually didn't listen to it deeply enough to consider it for this list, but Soccer Mommy gets a lot of love. There are a lot of singer-songwriters and indie, Snail Mail even. I feel like many more artists are getting more exposure and more love than Stella Donnelly. I actually think Stella Donnelly is about as good as any of them. Like seriously, I was really impressed with Beware of the Dogs. I was very impressed with this album, Flood, almost just as enjoyable, if not just as good as Beware of the Dogs. I've got Stella Donnelly, who, again, I urge you to listen. She's still floating under the radar. I don't really see her popping up on any of these best of 2022 lists, but I've got her at number 24 with Flood. And at number 23, I've got Harry Styles with Harry's House. He's got a couple infectious radio hits. He's got, everybody likes As It Was, right? That synth sound on the chorus, just brilliant production, right? And then a lot of people love Matilda, but he's got a lot of other good songs on there as well. I really enjoyed this one, especially a follow-up to his last one that I thought was pretty good as well. I was just listening to this one, I'm like, man, Harry Styles' music is pretty damn good. You cannot front on him. Even him being a pop sensation, a lot of music purists will kind of, you know, roll their eyes or just totally dismiss somebody with the pop success and the reputation and the exposure level of a Harry Styles. Nah, listen to the music. You can't front. And I've got Harry's House, again, at number 23. At number 22, I've got Wise Blood with And in the Darkness, Hearts Aglow. I actually did a video on Wise Blood just as she was about to release the album, or actually just after she released the album is when I did the video. But anyway, Wise Blood, I don't think that this was as good as Titanic Rising. I thought that it has some super good high points. I love the Grapevine. I love the track 2, Children of the Empire, just the bounciness of that one. I felt like it was more akin to Titanic Rising's Every Day, whereas she's got other songs like Grapevine, and even the album opener on this latest album I thought was more akin to like Andromeda, which might have been the best song from Titanic Rising. But yeah, this album might not have been as good as that, but it wasn't far off. Like, I don't look at this as being an album misstep. I look at this as just being another very good Wise Blood album. Smartly written. She's really honed her style to where she's kind of carved out her own sub-niche of like what, Baroque pop, chamber pop, to where it's a different sound than a lot of people who are operating within that same indie singer-songwriter space. Wise Blood, very good and thoughtful artist. This was a very good album. I've got it at number 22. Number 21, SZA with SOS or Sauce. I think it's SOS. It could be Sauce too. It just came out. Like I was like, when I saw this drop, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to listen to another one before I do this. Basically, SZA's the reason why this list is coming out today and not a couple days prior, because this one and Little Sims, there were certain brand new releases that I had to listen to before doing the list. But SZA, very, very good album. I don't know yet whether I like it more than her last album from what, now 4 to 5 years ago. It's been a minute since she dropped, and it's one of those things where you just hope that the sudden success, you know, because she went from being like a prospect that only like hardcore like black hippie fans knew about, like when Kendrick Lamar and them were just coming up. SZA was like a name that was just starting to bubble, but then when she dropped the proper album and then started featuring on high profile songs with, you know, like Doja Cat and others, like her name and reputation just grew more and more to where she was like a big deal. So I was hoping that the album was very good, and I'm just hoping that the success isn't and hasn't been too much. It's a lot to deal with, but yeah, she definitely delivered. Songwriting wise, she's even kind of experimenting with different genres here. She went into like a much poppier style with a couple of those songs, like even electronic pop in a way, and I was surprised to hear it. And yeah, I just love her fusion of genres here. SOS or Sauce, very good album. I've got it at number 21. At number 20, I have Planes with I Walked With You A Ways. Planes is a collab between Katie Crutchfield of Waxahachie, one of my favorite, you know, artists in that kind of folk rock space, indie folk space, and Jess Williams. So this is Katie Crutchfield, aka Waxahachie, and Jess Williamson. And this was a this is as good as Waxahachie's albums, or at least very close to me. Like, they kind of alternate, it seemed, on the track list, where you got a Jess Williamson song and then a Katie Crutchfield song. They collab on a few of them too. But just songwriting wise, you could kind of tell who's writing what, and they are equally impressive song over song. So it's not like, oh, we got a Katie song, oh, we got a Jess song, or vice versa. Nothing like that. No, song over song, this thing holds. And it's very it's country folk country, which I'm not the biggest country music fan. I like some of the old traditional country. I don't like, you know, modern-ish country pop, but this isn't country pop. This is more folk country, you know, kind of down home singer-songwriter style, I will call it. This is closer to, you know, like the Highwomen, who had that collab album a couple of years ago that was very, very good. But yeah, Planes, I really enjoyed this thing. I had it at number 20. And at number 19, once again, it's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. Yeah, this is a pretty quirky band. I mean, just listen to their band name. But yeah, this is one of the most prolific artists out, you know, in any genre. Just their release schedule. Look at their discography. It's unbelievable. But again, they delivered 5 albums this year. To me, this was among their best. And yeah, there's like a song per word, like Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs. I think that is like the concept, song over song. But they just fuse so many different styles of music together. They've got, you know, prog, progressive rock, which might best explain what they do because it is so genre bending and hybrid across genres. So indie rock, sometimes they'll even go into some hardcore or death metal. Sometimes they'll go into like a folkier or even dream pop. They've got like dream poppy albums. They've got a lot of psych rock. Yeah, this album kind of does a little bit of everything. And this is a quintessential King Gizzard release. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it. Very interesting songwriting. Conceptually, they're always kind of off the beaten path and a little bit weird. Sometimes they're talking about the climate, but in very esoteric ways. Sometimes they're talking about the occult. Sometimes they're talking about, humanity's place on the earth. Sometimes they're talking about toppling power structures. But yeah, King Gizzard, Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. I've got at number 19. Number 18, Kate LeBon with Pompeii. Singer-songwriter, indie singer-songwriter-wise, this was almost as good as it got this year. Just song over song. The melodies are so lush and the songwriting is so infectious to where, yes, the words matter and the lyrics matter, but the melody of the songwriting matters to me about as much, if not potentially more. She knocked it out of the park, I thought, song over song. Pompeii, very good album. And she's got a few very good albums, but I've got Kate LeBon with Pompeii. And by the way, I don't see this on a high on a lot of lists either. I was a little bit surprised by that. I thought that it was going to be featured more on some of the best of lists. But yeah, I've got it at number 18. Number 17, Conway the Machine with God Don't Make Mistakes. Is this as good as his last album? Maybe, maybe not. Conway is one of the most consistent rappers in the game right now. And he came into the game with Westside Gunn, who is in my honorable mentions this year. Westside Gunn delivered a very good album as well. Conway, along with maybe Freddie Gibbs and obviously Kendrick Lamar, album by album, probably has like the highest standard album over album. But you've got this other crop of artists who have been delivering very consistently very, very, very good albums. I mean, his Griselda mate, Benny the Butcher, as well, has had the reputation of delivering some very good projects. But Conway the Machine might be the best. Not only might he be the best lyricist, but he might also be the best album creator out of Griselda. And God Don't Make Mistakes, it's rugged, it's ruthless, it's very smart. Like, listen to like the cleverness line over line. Like, he's about as good as it gets when it comes to how clever your lyrics are. But he's doing it in such a biographical way, but also in such a cutthroat and ruthless way. It just works. And yeah, this album was very good. I've got it at number 17. Number 16, Sudan Archives with Natural Brown Prom Queen. This is kind of, what would you call it? It's indie, but some of it was electronic pop. Some of it was maybe indie soul. Some of it was R&B-ish. Some of it was more indie pop. Like, it's kind of a hybrid of styles, but Sudan Archives, she just leaves her stamp, song over song over song. It's very conceptually driven. Like, you could tell that she was making a theme-based album with this one, and it's so powerful. The songs are so good. The production is outstanding. Yeah, I just enjoyed just about every bit of Sudan Archives. And some albums, like, you go in listening, expecting to listen to the whole thing. Others, you kind of subconsciously think that, okay, if I'm tuned out by like track 5, track 6, I'm just going to kind of stop it and go on to something else. But no, this one held my attention throughout the entire album. I've got Sudan Archives with Natural Brown Prom Queen at number 16. Number 15, I've got Alvvays with Blue Rev. I don't love the highest points as much as I love the high points from the Alvvays self-titled debut with songs like Archie, Marry Me, and Next of Kin, and Party Police. I just love those. The follow-up, Anti-Socialites, it had some good moments. I didn't like it as much. Maybe I need to re-listen again. But Blue Rev, this might be their best album cover to cover. Again, I love their debut, so I'm not going to declare that I think that this is better than the debut, but this is almost on par with it. Blue Rev, I think that the songwriting is better. I just don't think that the melodic, poppy high points are as good as that debut. Although The Pharmacist, which is the album opener here, is. Alvvays is one of those, they're kind of jangle pop, indie pop. Some classified them in my comments from a previous Alvvays video that I did. They called it power pop. I agree with that as well. They just have some of the best melodic earworms, just these infectious melodies that just, you know, in terms of the indie realm, it's about as good as it gets in terms of just the tastiness, like the ear candy that you're getting here. But the songwriting here was also very good. Like Belinda Says, I think was Pitchfork's #1 song of the year. And again, I love The Pharmacist and several other songs. But yeah, I've got Alvvays, Blue Rev, number 15. Number 14, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, once again with Omnium, Gatherum. The album opener on Omnium, Gatherum is called The Dripping Tap. Unbelievable. Like, that might be one of my 3 or 5 favorite songs of the year. It's a pretty long song, but just the different waves that they take you through, oh my goodness, it's outstanding. Like, I think I was like on a run when I first heard it or something, and it powered me and energized me throughout the entire run. And I'm just thinking, is the rest of the album gonna drop off after this song? Because it can't outdo the song, and I knew it couldn't outdo the song, but it was still very good, and they had several other high points. I didn't love like the death metal-ish Gaia, but I like the song The Evilest Man. I like Sadie Sorceress, but yeah, nothing is gonna top that long album opener, Dripping Tap. Like, that song's unbelievable. This was, to me, out of their 5 albums from 2022, Omnium, Gatherum was probably my favorite. Yeah, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, they're just an unbelievable band, unbelievably prolific band. And Omnium, Gatherum, I've got at number 14. Number 13, Romero, Turn It On. I did not expect this. This caught me off guard. I think I heard a song on, maybe, it might have been also on Henry Rollins' KCRW Saturday night show, which is on from like, I think 10 to midnight or something. But Romero is a kind of a punk pop or pop punk band. Yeah, because when you've got those kind of playfully sung melodies and just very tasty guitars where it's almost jangle pop, but it's still got enough reverb and it's punk-ish. It's the melodies that do it here for me. Like Romero, like there were just so many songs. I like Petals was one of them. I think Honey was probably my favorite song from the album. But yeah, this is a short album. Again, I like short albums. It's like probably, 30-something minutes long maybe. But yeah, Romero's Turn It On. It feels like every song on here damn near packs a punch. Give it a listen, because I don't think you're going to get this on any best of list. Like, this is kind of a band that is still relatively unknown, kind of floating under the radar. But yeah, Romero, Turn It On, I had as my number 13 album of 2022. Number 12, Freddie Gibbs with Soul Sold Separately. Freddie Gibbs is one of my favorite rappers. Has been for like the last 10 years. Since like Straight Killer No Filler, Babyface Killer, Cold Day in Hell. I love the early Freddie stuff. I love his stuff with Madlib. Look, this Soul Sold Separately, is it his best album? It's tough to say. He's got a lot of very good albums. Like Conway the Machine, Freddie Gibbs has a reputation of just delivering great album after album after album, but he's been doing so longer than the Griselda camp has. He's been doing it since, again, like the late, I would say 2008, 2009 is where he started like catching some steam, started getting some love in the magazine Double XL. I think he was on the freshman cover, maybe 2010 or something. Or yeah, I think it was 2010, maybe 2011. But Freddie Gibbs, Soul Sold Separately, it all came together. The delivery, which is just cold. It's like a combination of Crazy Bone from Bone Thugs and Harmony to some Tupac. He even quoted Tupac with that, and if I wasn't high, I'd probably try to blow my brains out, like which Tupac was saying on Me Against the World's Lord Knows. So Freddie Gibbs knows where he's drawing some of these influences from, but because of the bassy voice, because of the fast delivery, plus clever lyrics, cutthroat concepts, like, yeah, this album plus the production, like the production is phenomenal on here, which it was kind of spacey, but give Soul Sold Separately a listen. Like, if you haven't heard Freddie Gibbs, it wouldn't be a bad place to start, even though I always like starting at the beginning of somebody's discography. Freddie Gibbs, Soul Sold Separately, I've got at number 12. Number 11, I've got Florist with Florist. I wasn't sure whether to put this on a separate list, like I did ambient and ambient jazz on a whole different list. I wasn't sure whether Florist belongs here or elsewhere because it's so subdued vocally. Like, it's a very quiet album, but boy, is it beautiful. This is a very beautiful album, and there was just enough vocalizing and folk vocals and, you know, enough song structure to where, yeah, I thought that it was more appropriate on this list. But this is such a pleasant listen from Florist. Yeah, this was number 11 is high, but yeah, the Florist, it was just unskippable. I was just in such a serene place just listening through this thing multiple times. Like, I've probably listened to this one like 4 or 5 times now. But yeah, I've got the Florist with Florist at number 11. Number 10, I've got Kid Cudi with Entergalactic. I did not expect this. I didn't know if I would ever really like just a Kid Cudi album as much as I did his opening album, or, you know, the first album, and then the mixtapes before the first album. And then obviously he had Kids See Ghosts, which was very good. But he had like, it's like the enthusiasm behind Kid Cudi releases kind of waned over time. I don't know if it's because of the unpredictability of his sound. I don't know if it's because he went in a couple of different directions, but this was about as enjoyable a Kid Cudi album for me as his debut album, or, you know, as his feature on Kanye West's 808s and Heartbreaks track 2, like when Kid Cudi was just emerging. Track over track, and I'm listening to this thing like, damn, this is so good. This is sounding so good. And I'm thinking, is it going to drop off now? Is the album going to start getting less interesting now? And it's like, no, the next song would be just as good, if not better than the last song, and so forth. Anytime I encounter that type of an album listening experience, I know that I'm dealing with something very good and very enjoyable. So yeah, Kid Cudi, Entergalactic, number 10 for me. Number 9, Ari Lennox with Age, Sex, Location. I didn't listen to this one until more recently, and it was actually because my brother, Billy, kept on imploring me, he kept on mentioning, yeah, Ari Lennox is fire, Ari Lennox is fire. And I didn't even think that he would be that into an Ari Lennox album, but he kept on talking about how good it was, so I gave it a listen, and yeah, he wasn't lying. Like, this is a very, very good album. It's concept based. It's not just a collection of songs. There's direction. There's an overall theme to the album and so forth. Clever lyrics, great production, great vocal performances. Like, just the whole thing is just on point. I actually think that it should have been featured on more end of year lists. Like, I don't see it featured on like the Metacritic's wrap up and stuff, and or maybe I just missed it. No, I don't see it. But maybe you've seen it on certain publications' end of lists. But yeah, it's been absent as far as I've seen it. But I've got it at number 9, Ari Lennox, Age, Sex, Location. Number 8, Orville, Peck, Broncho. I thought that he was going to be Grammy nominated for something this year. I mean, he made a splash. Like, yes, there was, you know, not, controversy isn't the word, but, you know, it gained attention that he was doing kind of country-ish music and is openly gay. But when you listen to his voice, especially on the opening song, like Daytona Sand, like that just drew me in. And I had heard Orville Peck's last album from a couple of years ago. Very good album. And I was wondering, okay, where's he going to go from there? And then he delivers Broncho, which, again, the opener, Daytona Sands, another one of my absolute favorite songs from 2022. That thing is just, it sounds like something that could be opening a Quentin Tarantino movie. It is that good. And his voice really is kind of a combination of Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash. Like, it's just so cinematic, it feels, and the production is so lush and cinematic, but it doesn't take away from how organically good it is. Like, it's not overproduced, and the songwriting's very good. His vocal performances are very commanding. He's got such a presence on these songs. Like, I want to see him live. I missed him when he was in town a couple of months ago. I would love to see Orville Peck live. But yeah, I then introduced his music to like one of the chat rooms that I'm in, and a lot of them are kind of Orville Peck fans now. But Orville Peck, Broncho for me, number 8. Number 7, The Smile. That's the Radiohead offshoot essentially. A light for attracting attention. It is as good as, it's being placed on these year-end lists. I see it popping up everywhere. And Radiohead is one of those bands that always get hyped. Every time they come with something, it's going to be on the best of lists. It's going to be Grammy nominated, if not probably in the alternative rock, alternative album category. And they're just one of the most, beloved and esteemed, critically acclaimed groups, in recording music history, really. Especially if you look at like the last 30 years, like they are one of those bands that rarely misses. Whether you're talking about Tom York's solo stuff, whether you're talking about the proper Radiohead releases. But yeah, The Smile consists of Tom York and Johnny Greenwood. and then they got the drummer Tom Skinner. But yeah, this is a very interesting experimental, but the experimental doesn't become avant-garde to the point of being unlistenable. This is an extremely pleasant to listen to album. By the Smile, I've got a light for attracting attention at number 7. Number 6, Beyonce, Renaissance. This is probably going to be recognized as the album of the year. I already see that it's like pulling away at number 1 on the Metacritic's year-end wrap-up where they're aggregating everybody's best of lists and stuff. Beyonce Renaissance has been number 1 there. It was one of the highest just rated albums of the year when it was released. I expected to maybe win Grammy for album of the year. Beyonce's going to kill it this year with this album. More 80s Grace Jones-like. But yeah, Beyonce and her production team, her writing team, just Team B, they killed it with Renaissance. And this was one of my favorite albums as well. This might go down as Beyonce's, along with maybe Lemonade, as the best Beyonce album to date. We'll see. I mean, time will tell. But yeah, Renaissance, excellent album. I've got it in the number 6. Number 5, Kevin Morby, This Is a Photograph. This is another very good Kevin Morby album. He's like Cass McCombs, but I would say maybe even a little better if you're talking just album per album. To me, Kevin Morby hasn't missed, really. Like, maybe City Music was a slight step back, but I remember shooting his show at not the observatory, but I think the Constellation Room within the observatory in Santa Ana, California, and he was just coming off of the Singing Saw album. And by then, I'm like, man, Still Life was good, Singing Saw was good. Well, since then, OMG Rock and Roll was good. Sundowner, his last album before this one was very good. And this one, This Is a Photograph, might be his best. This might actually be his best album. I haven't seen it near the top of a bunch of lists. I thought that I was going to see it because it was rated very high. Like, I think Pitchfork rated it high. The Metacritic aggregate scores had it very high. So I thought that it was going to be in more top 20s, top 40s, and so forth. Haven't seen it that much. But yeah, I've got Kevin Morby, one of the best singer-songwriter, indie singer-songwriter style singers. And he is, by the way, in a relationship, long-time relationship with Katie Crutchfield, Waxahachie. And I follow them both on Instagram. And, they sometimes will have like writing sessions together. During the pandemic, they were going on live together, and one would be playing guitar, the other singing, and then vice versa. But yeah, I kind of look at them as sort of being like an indie power couple of sorts. But yeah, Kevin Morby, This Is a Photograph, I've got it number 5. Number 4, Nas, King's Disease 3. This is one of Nas's best albums, and yes, he is over 30 years into his career. This run that he's been on, if you count King's Disease 1, King's Disease 2, the Magic album in between, and now King's Disease 3, these last 4 albums, this might be Nas's best 4-album stretch of his long career. And I feel like these King's Disease albums are so good, you've got to reevaluate the discographies, like the comparative discographies between him and Jay-Z, because they'd always had the rivalry over the years. But we've got to reassess where you place Nas on the pantheon of the greatest rappers with the greatest bodies of work, because nobody expected this late game resurgence between Nas and Hit Boy specifically. Hit Boy's been producing these last 4 albums, and this has kind of been like the musical match made in heaven. Seriously, Nas's King's Disease 3 might be the best album in this latest run. Give it a listen. I didn't think he would outdo King's Disease 2, but here we are with King's Disease 3, and Nas is sounding as good as ever, as focused as ever, as lyrical as ever, as energized as ever. I don't know how he's done it, but King's Disease 3, for me, the number 4 album of 2022. Number 3, Kendrick Lamar, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. This is the long-awaited Kendrick album, as every Kendrick Lamar album is super highly anticipated. I don't know if this is going to go down on par with like To Pimp a Butterfly or even Good Kid, Mad City. Or, I mean, damn, the thing is, Kendrick has had album over album, is probably the number 1 artist in the past, we'll say like 15 years in terms of album by album quality. You'd have to look at maybe like Fiona Apple, which you would have to then extend it to like 30 years, because Fiona Apple also album by album has that reputation. Outkast is another one. But Kendrick Lamar, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, had a couple of the best, most well-written songs I have heard in the rap genre for some time. Like, Some of them I had to re-listen to like 3 times, not because I didn't understand what was going on, but just because I was so captivated by the themes being expressed and explored, from, you know, lesbianism, like to family, to trauma and so forth. And I'm talking like childhood trauma, and all of these things are being addressed and explored in a way that only Kendrick Lamar and his songwriting ability can pull off. Brilliant album, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. I actually think that it's a little bit underrated when I look at its positioning on a lot of these year-end lists. I feel like it shouldn't float anywhere under the top 5. Like, to me, that would almost be like the unfair standard that his albums are now held to because of how great his albums have been in the past. We might be getting a little bit of that here, but yeah, I've got Kendrick Lamar, Mr. Morale, and the Big Steppers. A very long album for Kendrick Lamar. I've got it at number 3. Number 2, I've got Big Thief with Dragon, New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You. Big Thief is one of my favorite folk rock bands. They had one of my favorite songs of 2019 or 2020. It was on the UFOF album. The song was called Cattails. That might still be my favorite Big Thief song. I thought that the album after UFOF, Two Hands, was probably their best album to date. I might have to reassess that now with Dragon, New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You. This might actually be, from cover to cover, their best album. Now, those 2 other albums I mentioned, UFOF and Two Hands, those were released in the same calendar year. So they basically leveled up big time. I think that this album here, which is the longest Big Thief album by far. There's several songs on here, and usually I hold a premium on on the brevity of albums. Usually I get a little exhausted by an album if it's too long. And this was a very long album, but the quality it didn't sound like it was as long as it was while I was listening through it the first time, second time, third time. Again, it is a very long album, but the quality of folk rock and psych folk rock. Like, I suspect that they've done some psychedelics, and I'm talking like ayahuasca and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into any of my personal histories with any of it, but Big Thief, you listen to the lyrics, you listen to the snake allegories, and like, what was that line? Like, it was like, I talk to the snakes, they talk, or no, I've got the venom in me, or the snakes, they lied and they guide me. They talk to me and guide me, or something. Listen for that lyric. It's one of the best lines of that entire album, but it's so visceral, and the descriptions are so vivid, and the sound is so warm. It sounds like they were like all having a great time and all within the same, hut, basically recording this thing, like all together. It's got a very communal feel, not too dissimilar from Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros Here album, and even the Up From Below album prior to Here. Though I love those 2 Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros albums, by the way. But yeah, Big Thief, I don't know if they outdid themselves, but they held a high standard that I already had for them. And I think that song by song, this might be their best album. Dragon, New Warm Mountain, I Believe in You by Big Thief, I've got at number 2. And number 1, I've got The Weeknd with Dawn FM. I don't think that this album is being placed highly as it should be across best of 2022 lists. I know that it got high reviews when it came out. And, I did feel kind of weird putting look, I'm not one of those purists who kind of shun popular music, right? But when I was listening to The Weeknd, I'm like, man, is this even better than that After Hours album, which I thought was a good album? I'm like, is this even better than that? And then the concepts, and then the Jim Carrey featuring with those speaking parts on the album as well. And just song over song, the melody, the vocal performances, the production, 106 Point Never doing the production in the way that he did it, where it kind of marries the 2 worlds genre-wise. Like, I wasn't sure how that combination was going to work between The Weeknd and 106 Point Never. I like both artists respectively on, in their own realms, but I can't believe it works so well on Dawn FM. This was to me a musical masterpiece. And maybe I feel differently over time. And again, I felt weird about having like The Weeknd at number 1. I mean, it was between The Weeknd, Big Thief, and Kendrick Lamar basically, and then Beyonce, who I mean fell to 6, but I mean she only fell to 6. It's still one of the best albums in my view this year, and I get it. Most lists have Beyonce's Renaissance at number 1, but for me, The Weeknd's Dawn FM, song over song, just how the abilities of The Weeknd and what make The Weeknd, they were just so spotlit. So yeah, the more I thought about it and the more I started re-listening to some of these albums, trying to determine, okay, which one am I really, just in my soul, in my gut, am I feeling the most? I have no problem with putting The Weeknd, Dawn FM, at number 1 for 2022. This album was phenomenal. And if you haven't heard it, please give it a listen. And that tops off my best albums of 2022 list. Let me know what you thought about the list. Let me know some of your favorite albums of 2022. And yeah, catch you next year. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.